Good morning, everybody. It's Sunday, June the 10th, and I'm getting ready to get started on the QCX 40 meter CW transceiver. I've got everything kind of laid out. I'm going to follow the book step by step. I've cleaned off the back of the board. The soldering iron is heating up, and the first piece I have to put in is the IC socket. So I'll be getting started putting that in, and I'm taking my time. I'm not going to rush through this trying to get it all built in a day. It might take me a week. Of course, the video is not going to be that long, but just wanted to show this first step of putting this in, and I'll break the video up into different parts that I'm putting in, but I'm not going to sit there and film this whole thing, which will make this video anywhere from, you know, an hour to 2 hours. I mean, I seen one guy's video. Of course, he done a lot of explanation, and I think it was almost 2 hours long and very detailed. I watched it. I've watched it twice. I've read the manual 3 times, but I'm gonna have the manual laying here and go step by step, checking all my values when I go to put them in. I don't want to let the smoke out when I first turn this thing on, so I'm taking my time with this one. So I'll shut the camera off, get it reoriented, and we'll get started. One little trick I did learn was that socket will fall out when I turn it upside down, is to use some tape and tape that socket down, keep it from falling out. Okay, I've soldered 2 corners. Now I'll take that tape off. Need to find something to put under this to give it a little bit of so it's not flopping around. Well, we got the IC socket put in, the direction it's supposed to be, and all the solder joints look good. Good flow, no bridges. So mark that off the list of what needs to be done. Okay, now I'm getting ready to put in the IC number 3 chip, but you have to be real careful because it doesn't have a socket, so you have to kind of bend the tips to go in. And of course, I'm going to tape that one down as well, so it's flush against the board. It won't fall out while I'm trying to solder it in. And I had to leave the room for a little bit, so I got to wait for the soldering iron to heat up. But I'll show you in the book. Maybe. This is the second step I'm getting into right here. And I've already put this one in. You notice it's gray. I'm getting ready to put this one in, and then I have 6 of these chips to put in. All of them surface mount, no sockets. Or not surface mount, but through hole. But there's no sockets for them. And I'll get these all put in. And once those are in, I believe the next step is to start putting capacitors in. And there's a ton of capacitors. I have to check those values before I put them in. But right now I'm concentrating on these IC chips. Make sure I get good clean connections. The socket went in real good. I took this magnifying glass and checked each one of the connections, making sure I had no bridges. I had good solder connections, and everything looks fine. So I don't know how long it'll take for that to heat up. I need to let it heat a little more. But here's the other 6 chips, trying to get them in the camera, that I'll have to put in. And these are LM4562 chips. Okay, wired both corners, or soldered both corners. Chips in there. flush. So make sure I don't have any solder bridges. Okay. I got to do the next. Okay, I got those soldered. And I'll check each one of those. You got to make sure you get these rest of these ICs in their proper orientation. Basically the dimple goes in the same direction as you see on the silk screen. Oop, I already put that one in upside down. I didn't look. I'm going to double check, make sure I got all the dimples going in their proper direction. And they are. And now I'll solder these in. Okay, all the IC chips are in and soldered. I've checked for any bridges, solder splatter, none. So that much is done. Now it's ready to move on to capacitors. Okay, right here is all 16 of the 104 capacitors that's got to go on this board. So I'll start putting these on the board and be back when I have them on. Okay, I've got all the capacitors, the 104s, in place. As you can see, now it's time for me to solder these in. So I'll do that and be right back. Okay, the 104 capacitors are all soldered in. I've checked for any bridges, bad solder joints, and so far I'm good. Now is to move on to the next step. Okay, I've got all the capacitors now installed. All the ceramic capacitors, if that's what you want to call them. I don't think they're called ceramic capacitors because they don't look like those discs. But I have all these installed now, and check my soldering joints and connections. They all look good. Don't see any bridging, any splatters, so I think I'm good. Now it's to move to the Zener diodes, which are right here. I'm getting out now. They're part number 1N4148. There's 4 of them. One of them stands up, the other 3 lay flat. So I'm gonna get ready to put them in, but you know, right here they are. That's 3 of them, and I got the other one here. And I gotta follow the instructions because there's a band, and there's a particular way that band goes on the circuit board. So I'm gonna get ready to get that set up and get them in place. Okay, here's the board. Got those Zener diodes in. 2 of them are right there. One is right there. You can't already see it because of the way the light is. And the one that stands up is right there. So I got all those in. Soldering's looking good on the back. You can see all the solder joints, and I've been checking them closely. So far everything's looking good. Okay, I installed the last diode, which is a protection diode right there. So if you'd happen to wire your polarity for power in reverse, this will blow and protect the rest of your circuit board. The manual says you can, and it does. I think he said on transmit that this thing will use 400 millivolts, you know, this diode here, and that if you wanted to, you could leave this diode out to squeeze every wattage on output that you can get. But to me, to be on the safe side, I'd rather have that diode in just in case something would happen that I would get polarity wrong. I don't think I would, but you just never know. So it's better to be safe than sorry. So I went ahead and put it in. And now it's time to put the crystals in. And they're still in their packet. I remember, okay, I know this is one of them. My compartments in my little storage container didn't have enough slots for everything to be stored separately, so I left some of this stuff in the bag. Okay, there's the crystal. This one is the 27 megahertz. Let's see, I don't think the 20 megahertz is in this bag. So I'll put this bag up. And right there it is in this bag. Okay. And that's the 20 megahertz. Now going by the manual, crystal 1, which is up here at the top, is the 20 megahertz crystal. So install the 20 megahertz crystal there. Bend those just a little bit. And let me go ahead and solder it in before I go to the next one. That one. Okay, and then the 27 megahertz crystal goes right here, crystal number 2 socket. Let's solder that one in. Okay, so the two crystals are now soldered in place, and I have to clip the ends off. And I go through my notebook. I don't think you can see it here. Yeah, here's the notebook. I go through the notebook and I put a check mark by everything I've done. And then now, which I think I will take a break after getting all the ICs in, all the capacitors in, all the diodes in, and now the two crystals are in. The next step, we're in section 3.21 of the manual, is putting in the 10K resistors, and there's 16 of those. And then continue to go on with resistors. You got 12 1K, 12 3.3K, 400 ohm, 3 120s, 2 33K, 2 47K, 2 36K, a 270 ohm, 470 ohm, a 3.9, 4.3, a 5.1. I mean, there's a whole lot of resistors on this thing. Once you get the 7.5K and the 750K resistors in, then you go into your potentiometers. And the reason why I said I think I'll take a break now from this, unplug the soldering iron, let it cool down, let the board rest a while, and I'm going to go do something else. But we have made it all the way through to installing the crystals. Like I said, there's the board with pretty much everything, you know, already soldered in from going through step one all the way up to where we're at now, which the last step was installing these two crystals, 20 megahertz and a 27 megahertz. So I think we've done pretty good. Got everything in. Again, I inventoried everything, so there was no missing parts other than this S1 micro switch, which Hans is sending me. This acts as a, if you leave the board just like it is, no enclosure, this can be a makeshift straight key. I do have an enclosure coming, but I still wanted this on here because I plan to maybe modify the enclosure to where I will have a button on top of the enclosure to where I can still utilize this if I don't have a straight key or a paddle to use the keyer to plug in if I'm out using it. So, but that's where we're at now. Okay, I've got all the resistors in. Don't know if you can see, but all the resistors are in. I checked every value before I put them in. All the soldering's done on the back. I've checked for bridges. Everything looks good and clean. So now we're getting ready to move on to the potentiometers and that stuff. I took about a half-hour break away between putting the capacitors on and starting the resistors. So now I'm getting ready to take another break, go eat lunch, and I'll start on it again. Okay, got the potentiometers soldered in, and I got the electrolytic capacitors in, bent this one over according to the instructions. And then I got all the transistors put in. There's 6 of one kind and 1 different one. So you have to look really close at the numbers, make sure you get them in the right place. So sorry I missed showing some of the other stuff I got in, but I got all the electrolytic capacitors in, these transistors. potentiometers, the variable, can't remember what that is, but it's all installed and I'm moving right along. Okay, I've done wound the first toroid. See if I can get it in the camera so you can see it. Right there. And I checked it with this tester to find out what the reading should be, and it read just what it was supposed to be. 16 windings on that. Some other things I'd probably done that you didn't get to see is put these pins in, the other various pins, the power connector, this transistor here, and that's it. Still checking all my soldering connections, they all look good. I have 1, 2, 3 more of these toroids to wind from the low pass filter kit, and then this T1, which is a monster. I think it has 38 turns on one of the secondaries, and I can't remember what the 3 primaries are. I think they're 5 turns, but I'm not going to show you all this stuff about winding toroids. There's a whole bunch of videos on there about that. But it's coming along. I've taken several breaks, so be back in a bit. Sketch. Okay, I'm doing this here. Do my 38. Come out. Wind with number 20 enamel. 33 millimeters. I hate millimeters. Do my 5. Wind, do my 5, wind. Okay. One.